Hello, my name is Patrick Betancourt, and this is 615 News.
So, we've all heard or maybe even seen the famous moon landing done by astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Aldrin. But what exactly happened during that time to not only make it happen, but also how did the moon landing influence other projects related to space travel? Hi, my name is Patrick, and I'm going to be your host for Channel 615 News today, and we're going to be discussing the intricacies of the Apollo 11 moon landing that occurred in 1969 and the climate surrounding the event. Due to the launches of Sputniks 1, 2, and 3, with the USSR beating the USA in space technology, the USA became more invested in the idea of space travel. With this new technology, NASA created a new frontier with the success of Apollo 11's moon landing, allowing other space projects to exist, increasing development for space research, and allowing future missions of its kind to succeed even further. So as I mentioned briefly, the whole reason this even happened was because during the Cold War, the USSR was able to beat the USA in terms of space technology by launching their artificial satellites known as Sputniks 1, 2, and 3, which were launched in 1957 and 1958. But the USA was not about to give up. During the Cold War, the USSR and the USA were constantly attempting to one-up each other in technology, and this situation was no different. So in order to one-up the USSR, space organization NASA was created in 1958, and President John F. Kennedy at a joint meeting in Congress in 1961 challenged NASA to land a man on the moon by the end of the decade, stating this:
I therefore ask the Congress, above and beyond the increases I have earlier requested for space activities, to provide the funds which are needed to meet the following national goals. First, I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space, and none will be so difficult or expensive to accomplish.
The program that would land a man on the moon, Apollo, was officially launched in 1967 with the launch of Apollo 1, although this launch ended in tragedy. The spacecraft caught fire and killed the 3 astronauts on board, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee. Due to this catastrophe, Congress took action, and NASA wasn't able to run a crewed mission until late 1968 with Apollo 7. On July 16, 1969, Apollo 11 was launched into space. We will be moving to our live reporter Oat Milk on the scene.
Thank you, Patrick. We have traveled back in time to the scene of the Apollo 11 launch. As you can see, there are tons of people waiting to witness this launch, as well as people on mission control, and as I'm talking, they're counting down.
10, 9, ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Wow, that was truly beautiful.
I think he was too close to the rocket. Anyway, we're going to transition over to Nux to give us a visual presentation of how the launch was possible. Thank you. As you can see here, a team of very smart, hardworking people used a lot of complex math that I don't understand in order to calculate not only how to land the rocket on the moon itself, but all the factors such as the rocket getting caught in Earth's orbit, in the moon's orbit, and how the astronauts could make it back safely. Although since no one was sure whether these calculations were exactly correct, they had to take a massive leap of faith to see if it would actually work. So, they launched the Apollo 11 rocket, and sure enough, it happened.
Okay, engine stop. ATA at a descent. Host control both auto, descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. Force 13 is in.
We copy you down, Eagle.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
Sorry about the scenery change. The news station burned down during that segment, but we're back. The Apollo 11 rocket had successfully landed on the moon, and in turn made the Apollo program as a whole successful. After astronaut Neil Armstrong stepped outside of the craft and walked on the moon, well, I'm sure we've all heard it.
It's one small step for man. One giant leap for mankind.
And indeed it was Mr. Armstrong. The 3 astronauts spent a total of 21.5 hours on the moon before coming back to Earth, and in that time, they were exploring, collecting rock and soil samples, took photographs, and were even able to use a device to measure the distance between the Earth and the moon. This was truly a historic moment ever. The US was able to break the sonic frontiers and landed a man on the moon for the first time ever. After the astronauts arrived back on Earth, they received a goodwill tour with President Richard Nixon, as President Nixon had also believed the feat they accomplished had benefited all of mankind. Before we move on to the Apollo missions that took place afterwards, we got an interview with a man on mission control the day Apollo 11 landed on the moon. Take it away, Patricia.
So, Mr. Kranz, what is it like being in this very room again?
When I walk into the room, I don't have to relive it. As soon as I walk into this room, seems crazy, but I hear things.
I completely understand how you feel that way. Now, how did former President John F. Kennedy play a role in this whole operation?
It was a great time for America, and Kennedy's speech, I think, ignited the fire. Let's go do it.
I see. I'm curious, how did it feel in that moment seeing Apollo 11 achieve liftoff?
Now you're accelerating down there, and you can almost feel it. I believe 100% that we're going to be successful. We're going to land that crew on the moon.
What was the atmosphere like inside of Mission Control during that moment?
Nobody can come in or out until we have either landed, we have crashed, or we have boarded. Those are the only 3 outcomes from now on. And it
seems really tense. Now, final question. How do you feel all these years later after having achieved that?
To me, it's out there. And it basically says, I'm still here. Come and get me.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Kranz. Back to you, Patrick.
Like I mentioned before, there were actually more Apollo missions after 11, up to Apollo 17 in fact. To make things short, I'll talk about the more important ones. Apollo 12 launched in November 1969 and was able to accomplish double what Apollo 11 had done, collecting double the rock and soil samples, spending a total of 31.5 hours on the moon, and finding parts of an unmanned Surveyor 3 spacecraft that was launched in 1967. Next, we have Apollo 13, which is a mission that solidified the danger of the program, with an oxygen tank exploding in the spacecraft, resulting in the crew being low on both oxygen and fuel. Fortunately, they were able to make it safely back to Earth without serious injury. Lastly, Apollo 17 was the final moon mission, due to the budgets of the Apollo program being slashed, an unfortunate end to one of the greatest programs mankind has ever created. This has been 615 News, and we'll catch you after this commercial break.